Taitanga hauiti, ati parau, tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou haere mai nei, I tēnei rā, I te poroporo aki I tō tamaiti. Nō reira, mihi kaua tau I a koutou katoa. Over the past week or so, we've heard of Parekura's prowess in tribal links, uawa, hauiti, Ngāti Porou. His prowess as a rugby player, his prowess as a fisherman of some note. The Horomia family, Mr. Speaker, is an old and respected whānau, but from Te Araroa, my wife's side. And my wife and Parekura are very closely related. So much so that from Kōpua Pounamu, where his father Willow is buried, Te whānau atu whakairi ora. Mr. Speaker, when I first started going out with my wife, well, she was going out with me. One of the things that that my brother-in-law and I, Tuku Morgan, used to do every Christmas was to make this pilgrimage to Te Araroa. And if any of you have ever been there, it's the most idyllic spot. If it was in America, you just couldn't afford to live there. Actually, you can afford to live there. Mr. Speaker, there's a place called Matakawa Point, which juts out into basically the Pacific Ocean. The next piece of land you bump into is South America. And I want to relate a fishing story about my brother who would interrupt his holidays and come for a holiday with Tuku and I. And he would, as we would, and if people know Matakawa Point, you have to actually get there on a four-wheel drive. You have to go down, walk down about a mile or so down to the bottom where you could fish. And, and I'm sure you all know that whenever two Māori men, more than two Māori men get together, there's a competition. A competition about something. Either a competition about what is happening then, or a competition that happened 200 or 300 years before between Ngāti Porou and some other people, which I will get to soon, Mr. Speaker. And my lasting memory of one of those pilgrimages is that, like three grown men who couldn't fish to save themselves, myself included, my brother-in-law Tuku and Parekura. And the first time that we went out, Mr. Speaker, while Tuku and I were after the big kingi off the shore, and we could actually see kingies jumping out of the water, waving at us, "Get me, get me." It was the most idyllic day of one's life. Beautiful sun, plenty of fish in the sea, and we looked around and Parekura was up on the hill trying to undo his bird's nest and also having lunch. And he prepared this picnic for us. He came all the way from Mangatuna, early in the morning, very early in the morning, and he had prepared this feast of roast chicken, of rewana, of roast chicken, rewana, of spuds, of kumara, and no green stuff. Absolutely none. And Mr. Speaker, we had the most wonderful day talking about all sorts of things. And it was, Mr. Speaker, it wasn't long after I had become Minister of Māori Affairs and my brother-in-law was involved in some TV episode. And I tell you what, during that episode, not one, apart from my leader, Winston, not one Māori in the community stood up for us two, apart from Parekura. Uncle Peter bagged us from here to eternity. Trevor, who normally bags anybody from here to eternity. But Parekura, he wasn't even in the place. He always gave us support. When I was minister, he was always up in my office, giving us support and giving us advice. You know, when I came back into Parliament, Mr. Speaker, the first thing that Parekura said to me was, "What's those pakas like, bro? What are those pakas like? Your pakas?" And I thought, I was quite honoured to have this bunch of pakas with me and in charge of these pakas. But that was Parekura. Parekura sort of knew what question to ask and how to ask it. You'll have to ask Parekura. Mr. Speaker, they said his politics were clean. But, sir, over the last 10 days or so, I've asked about his rugby. About the day of the porphyry for the Pacific Island community, leaders and politicians, I went over to him, and he's sitting where David Parker is now. And I asked him how was he, and he rubbed his leg and he said, "You know, bro, my rugby injury, been playing up." And then he proceeded to blame my wife's mother's brother, Uncle Ebi, for that illness. Now, Ebi's been dead 2 or 3 years. And everywhere I've been with Parekura, especially up the coast, Ebi has always got up and said Ebi was a dirty player. And he used to show us his finger, even at the funeral. Parekura had a sore finger because Ebi had bitten his finger. And so this is what we were sort of brought up with. Until I met a colleague of Parekura's who played rugby with him on the same team, and who said that Parekura was the dirtiest player you could ever have played against. Or with. Mr. Speaker, I want to say, you know, there have been lots of nice words slung about this house today about Parekura. He was kind, he was jovial, he was friendly, he was humble. Yes, he was all of that. But on the rugby field, no, he wasn't. He was a thug. Which sort of says to me, Mr. Speaker, he gave as good as he got, and that was in the House as well. When I got the news from my brother-in-law that my mate had passed away, I was and I will always be devastated by that news. At 62 years of age, I think we robbed him of some of his better years, and he robbed us of some of those years that we could have had and should have had with him. My heart does go out to the whānau, to the sons, but at least he told me once, and this is one of those myths that I'm about to explode, and I'm sorry, Ngāti Porou, but he has a Ngāpuhi connection, like most people do. And that Ngāpuhi connection was through a battle. And his tupuna was taken to the north, but eventually came back, and he brought Christianity with him to the coast. One of those people who brought Christianity to the coast. Mr. Speaker, my family, my wife and my kids, I love that man so much that this place is going to be the worse for his leaving. Kia ora.
Reino, te rekaumi. A tihei mauri ora.